Welcome, everybody, to the Takeaways edition of the Vegas Nation podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Fang, joined today by Tristen Kuhn. He covers all things Raiders. I'm happy to have him on today. We're also brought to you by Station Casinos, STN Sports. Download the mobile app today. All right, Tristen, first of all, I want to thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. You do a lot with recruiting, college football. You're into all of that. Raiders Scout on IG. What, first of all, is the most exciting thing for you right now with the draft coming up ahead?
Um, Honestly, just the draft in general. Like, so looking forward to it. It's been since January. It's really been something I've been looking forward to, and to have it almost right here finally.
Yeah, I mean, it is almost here finally, about what, 10 days away or less here as I look at the calendar.
Yeah, next
Um,
Thursday.
Looking forward to seeing what happens right now with that number 7 pick. And so what I'm curious about too is in that, like, there's been so much talk about what could happen with Houston, so much talk about what could happen with the Cardinals. Do you feel like the Raiders are potential suitors right now to get into that spot, whether it's trading with Houston or trading with the Cardinals? How much do you feel like they'll make that push to try to move up?
I think so. Houston, I don't buy at all that they're considering taking Will Anderson. I know, and I think other people know that they're in love with Tyree Wilson too. So I could honestly see a situation at 7 play out where we trade down with them, pick up some more picks that way. If I think the Colts end up jumping up to 3, they just, we've seen years past with the Bears did it for Trubisky. They just jump up one spot to secure their guy. And, people think, like, why would they do it? He's just going to be available later. But it's the whole concept of the Cardinals are going to trade out of 3, I think. It's either going to be us, maybe the Eagles. I don't think so, though. Maybe the Lions if they really are in love with someone like Will Anderson and they want to jump the Seahawks, or if the Titans really want to get aggressive. So I just don't think that the Raiders are going to be willing to outbid anyone. Dave Ziegler's never been the guy that, like, he's going to go out and show, that he's willing to put all his chips on the table, basically. No pun intended there. But I feel like he's just not going to be the guy that gives up a first this year, first next year, multiple day 2 picks. It just doesn't seem like him.
Yeah, I feel the more likely scenario is that they would move down or just stay and see what happens at 7. Lots of talk right now about the possibility that the consensus number 1 will be Bryce Young and that the first cornerback taken out of the market will be Devin Witherspoon, according to betting trends, if you follow that. So I don't know how accurate that is, or if it's smoke leading up to it to throw everybody else off and say, okay, well, like for instance, with the Raiders, if Witherspoon isn't there, then what do we do? I would suppose that they would look at Christian Gonzalez, but what's your take?
I personally don't think Gonzalez is a total fit. At Oregon, they were running a lot of soft coverage, a lot of zone. In Colorado, it was the opposite. He was running a lot of man, and he wasn't good at Colorado. I was surprised, like, when he transferred to Oregon, but I think if Witherspoon's off the table, which seems could happen at 6 to the Lions, because I mean he's basically the definition of a Dan Campbell guy.
Yeah.
Um, I think in that case, you either take someone like Tyree Wilson if he's available, and you figure out how to use the D line that way, or you move down with the Texans, for example, or the Titans or someone, and you get Joey Porter Jr., who I think could be the best corner from the class. He's a middle ground between Gonzalez and Witherspoon. He's as big as Gonzalez. He's add more weight. He's not as much of an athlete, but he's more of an athlete like Witherspoon, but he plays so aggressive and he's so new to the corner position, playing it for like 2, 3 years already, that there's a lot of potential there.
Awesome. Who else do you see as having a lot of potential and being a fit for the Raiders, whether it's in the first or the second round at 38? How they kind of maneuver around and what happens, like, so what happens on the first pick is what I'm wondering, like, how does that first pick then determine maybe what could happen at 38, which is their next one down?
See, I don't really think it matters much at all.
Okay.
Corner is the only where I could see where it kind of matters, because if you go a corner at 7 or whatever, you're not probably going to take another one at 38. As bad as the DB room is, you still got to let guys like Nate Hobbs, Duke Shelley, David Long, you
Hmm.
got Tyler Hall. These guys still get their opportunity to play. Um, But I could see if they go corner that first round, the second round really is just best player available. Even if it's an offensive lineman, which no one really wants. But if it's a D tackle, linebacker, even a safety, they all those picks make sense. But like just some guys on top of my head, I really like the fit of Drew Sanders. I really like the fit of like the top four linebackers: Sanders, Henley, Simpson, and Campbell. All four of them really fit what Patrick Graham likes. Corner really depends. There's so many guys, but I really, really like the fit of Keanu Benton from Wisconsin. He's big, physical, total athlete, nose tackle, three tech. He's just, I mean, he fits exactly what Patrick Graham wants. He wants that run defender, but he wants that guy that can rush the passer too.
Love it. That's one of the areas, obviously, that I think everybody is looking at. How will the defense be shaped through the draft? And there are a ton of great prospects this season. When you look, especially at cornerback, I think there's a lot of guys to pull from. Um, I've talked to some people that seem to think defensive tackle is probably one of the thinnest, um, excuse me, position groups that the draft has to offer this season. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends because this year is probably the first year that we've really seen. There's four guys that are a tweener between D tackle and edge, and I don't think we've really seen that much before. Adebaware from Northwestern, he's new to the D tackle position basically. Mike Morris from Michigan, he's almost 6'10". Well, I think he's 6'7". He's a big guy, but he's new to that. He'd be new to that D tackle position. Um, I know Tuli Tuliupotu from USC. He dropped
Yeah.
weight, but I still think his best fit is on the inside in the NFL. I know he's 260. Probably need to get him up to like 280. But and you also got Keon White from Georgia Tech. Like it's just a bunch of guys that are tweeners, and there's not a ton of top end talent this year outside of Jalen Carter. I'm not huge on Kalijah Cansey. He's kind of got some problems with the run game, but I like the depth. Like that second round to that fourth or fifth round, there's a lot of guys that you can find and become plug and play starters. You're not gonna. There's maybe one like top 5 D tackle, and that's Jalen Carter. But after that, it's just a bunch of good guys.
Okay, so I have to ask you about this because it's in your Twitter profile. Fullback enthusiasts. Who are your top three fullbacks of all time?
Um, all time is tough because I haven't I played fullback, but I haven't really like followed
Okay.
many of them. Um, I can't really name three off the top of my head. Uh, just I'm going to put just for the namesake, John Kuhn. Not related in any way, but he is
Okay.
there just for the namesake.
Okay. So as you've been
Probably
writing,
Juice Jack,
oh, go ahead.
now that I think about it, you could probably make a case that Juice Jack is on there too.
All right, all right. Like
It's tough,
that. One of my
but
favorite all time was like Mike Allstott and
yeah, yeah,
Tom
yeah,
Rathman.
yeah.
And
Now
yeah,
that I'm saying it, there's a lot.
obviously Marcel Reese had some good runs too with the
Yeah,
Raiders. So
there's not a
there's
lot.
some good fullbacks to be had in
But
it's
the positions, I
playing
mean, the
position
positions
though.
changed. The positions
Yeah.
changed so
Yeah.
much. It's you no longer. I mean, yeah, you do. You have some blockers. Like there's Jakob Johnson, for example, is just a
Right.
total blocking fullback. But like a lot of fullbacks nowadays are guys that you can put out wide somehow and they catch passes, and it's just changed so much because it's gone from like a large running back that could block to now being like a undersized tight end.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it's like you said with Jakob, it's interesting how much, he's helped to open things up for that run game, particularly when I go back and look at Josh Jacobs's 80 plus yard run in Seattle that helped win them the game. That was a huge block by him.
I don't think his job is fully safe though. I do think there's going to be a fullback competition in camp. There's a couple of guys this year that are decent.
Okay.
I really like Derek Parrish from Houston. I mean, he's like does everything. But Hunter Puke's probably the big guy, but I don't really see them spending a 6th or 7th round pick on a fullback.
Okay.
I don't think the fan base would be too happy about it either.
Yeah, everybody seems to kind of gotten behind Jakob. They seem to really enjoy his time and with the club. And I know it was hard for him to come in too after you have Alec Ingold, who was beloved at that spot by the
Exactly. Yeah.
fans.
I mean, Jakob's a better blocker though.
So right now, Josh Jacobs, he hasn't come through and signed the franchise tag, and therefore he's not coming through right now to the offseason workouts. When do you anticipate that might be resolved and come to an agreement where we can see some happy medium there?
Um, I think it's gonna happen soon, probably after all season workouts. I accidentally made a big deal out of it on Instagram. I quickly realized so he's never attended off-season workouts other than his rookie season.
Uh-huh.
I might be wrong on that part too. He usually stays with his own trainer down in Miami or Vegas. Um, so it's not really a surprise that he misses this. I think the team is going to want to focus. I don't think the team has any intention right now of talking through a contract. I think everything, in this moment, not in general, but I think right now it's all focused on the draft, focusing on especially those day three guys and like the undrafted guys. But I think as soon as that draft is over, they'll restart contracts, and I think it happens sooner than later because if they were going to trade him, which I don't think is anywhere in the intention, he would probably be traded by now.
Right.
So then you have that draft capital. Granted, he would have to sign a franchise tag to be traded, but I think they just come back to the table after the draft, work things out. I don't think the Raiders want to set the market. I don't think they want to break the market for running back. And I don't believe Josh wants to be the highest paid running back either. That's all of him though. That's what he wants. Um, so it depends. I don't if he wants to be the highest paid running back, I think the contract talks would probably fall through.
And he's always said that he'll be happy staying silver and black, but we also have heard that before in the past, and that doesn't always pan out to be. So as long as it gets done and he comes up and shows up for training camp, that's where I think all of Raider Nation can exhale to the fact of seeing Josh Jacobs back out on the field. But as again, we come up to the draft, like if any team were to try to pursue him, and say, hey, because it's a non-exclusive tag, and any team was going to try to make an offer, I mean, the capital is quite a bit for that team to have to give up, being 2 draft picks plus trying to one up the franchise tag and the money there because it's 10.089 million. It's
Yeah.
almost 10.1. So that's a lot for a team to have to come in at,
I
right?
think the team could just well, there's that if they just want to straight sign him on the franchise tag. But I think also they could agree on a contract in essence, and then
Hmm.
they're like, all right, we'll trade you. You need to sign the franchise tag so the Raiders can trade you, and then once you're here, you'll sign this new long-term contract. I just don't see the Raiders really giving him the permission to seek a contract throughout the entire draft, and I don't think there's going to be teams that are going to be engaging in contract talks while they're trying to do the draft. Um, so if a trade happens, it probably happen after, but I still don't think anything happens there.
Just draft aside, what have you thought about some of the moves that the Raiders made and bringing in Jacoby Myers, Jimmy G, and then also with Philip Dorsett and bringing back Brandon Faison? I mean, those are some interesting moves there. Just wondering what your take is so far as to how the complexion of the team is starting to look.
It's like it's not going to be any top end guys. I don't really think that their intention was is to build through the draft, which makes sense. You need to get young talent on cheap contracts because we've seen what's happened in the past when we go out and we pay Corey Littleton all this money, and he's the eighth highest paid player on the roster this year. Nick Kwiatkowski, Carl Nat, like all these guys making way too much money. So you got to get guys that you can supplement with free agency. Brandon Faison's interesting because it's like a 2-year deal, which
Yeah.
makes him seem like a starting corner, but he's not a starting caliber corner. So I'm interested to see what Patrick Graham wants to do there. He's definitely like a man corner. He fits that really well. I like Marcus Epps. He allows
Yep.
Merrick to go back to strong safety, which I think is what he needed. Um, I'm Jacoby Myers is interesting. I mean, it's a lot of money invested in the wide receiver room, but it's 3 guys that can do every single route concept you want, and it's going to make it's going to put a lot of pressure on the defense. I really like Austin Hooper. He's not Darren Waller, but at the end of the day, I think you could make a case that Austin Hooper, Jacoby Myers, and the 100th overall pick is more valuable to the team than Darren Waller. But we'll see that we'll see this after this year, really.
Right, right. And a couple more for me here. Just as you started to mention Darren Waller, I think about that number 100 pick, and it's an interesting one because that's an area where obviously you can go a ton of directions. There's cornerbacks there that look good. You could go with a linebacker there, defensive tackle. There's a lot of obvious, needs that the Raiders have and players that might fit around that spot. But when I start thinking about Darren Waller and the idea that they will need to probably find another tight end in the mix and bring somebody in from the draft, and this is a good tight end rich draft, is there anybody you see sitting around, whether it's the Darren Waller pick or somewhere else, that you think they might make a plunge and go after a tight end?
Yeah, as you said, this tight end class is insanely good. I would say Dalton Kincaid at 38, but he's got the injury problem. He's almost 25, and I just don't see them investing a tight end that high, especially in a class where it's not like Dalton Kincaid and this massive drop off. It's Dalton Kincaid, and then right below him is Luke Musgrave or Darnell Washington, who are like almost the same level. Um, I like Tucker Kraft in that third round range. Sam Laporta from Iowa, I'm really high on him. Brenton Strange from Penn State. I think the one that like I've consistently stuck with, and it's been just ever since I saw that he was basically 6'10". It's like Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion. I mean, I don't know why he didn't get enough attention before the draft or before like the combine, and then the combine hits and he runs like a four, I think it was like a 4.45 40 or
Yeah.
whatever
Hmm.
at 6'8". Um, all I can say is I really think that Josh McDaniels would do a lot in that offense with someone that size, that speed. He's basically a mini Darren Waller, and it's weird to say. And if
Yeah.
they take him at pick 100, you're never going to hear the end of it. They basically traded Darren Waller for Darren Waller if it so happens. But I think that I really like the pick of Zach Kuntz. He fits so well. So does Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, my dad's a huge Notre Dame fan. I like watching Notre Dame. Obviously, I love Michael Mayer, but you just can't reasonably take a first round tight end.
Right. I'm in on that with you as well. I don't see it happening. I don't see the Raiders trying to pursue that in the first round. What could happen though, I wonder, is how the quarterbacks are going to shake out. Do you have any take on how the top five between Hendon Hooker and Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, we know the players. How do you feel like the order will go with those five?
I think, see, it's tough because part of me really wants to think that Bryce Young is the first overall pick, and it
Right.
makes a lot of sense. He's the best quarterback in the class. But at the same time, I get like this weird feeling that the Panthers are trying to get the Texans to trade up to one
Mm,
so for Bryce Young, but the Texans are realizing that and they're saying, yeah, we don't want a quarterback. It's I don't know. Maybe it's not true. Maybe it is. We'll probably never know. But I still think it's probably gonna be Bryce Young first overall. And in that case, I think the Texans would be dumb to pass on CJ Stroud. I don't think this is a massive drop off between them. And then I think Anthony Richardson is going to fall a little bit. I think Will Levis is basically a lock for the Colts, as bad of an idea as that probably is. Um, but see, I at the same time, I could see Seattle at what are they, 5? Just
yeah.
taking Anthony Richardson because he's not anywhere comparable to Russell Wilson coming out of college, but
Right.
Pete Carroll has never taken a first round quarterback, but I just think a guy like Anthony Richardson changes that. Maybe the Lions take one. Anthony Richardson's really the wild card. It depends where he goes. If the Texans value him or the Colts value him, then Will Levis is gonna slide down the board. But I don't think the Raiders take a quarterback either. Like I just don't see with all the needs on the roster, especially on defense, them going in for a guy who can't start day one. If it's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, sure. But at the same time, you don't pay Jimmy Garoppolo all this money over the next 2 years to then have your first round pick sit for 2 years. It just doesn't really make the most sense. I'm cool with like a guy, Jake Haener, Aiden O'Connell, even maybe Dorian Thompson Robinson, like that fourth, fifth round range, because that's better value. You can find a backup quarterback then. But
Yeah.
here, taking Anthony Richardson over, say, like, Devon Witherspoon, that's a tough one to do.
Right. Crazy stuff. And I'm so on the edge of my seat, waiting for draft day, waiting to see how this all shakes out, especially for the Raiders. If you had a wish list at 7, what is it?
It's gonna be Devon Witherspoon first. I love Devon Witherspoon. Then probably Jalen Carter. I think there's a small scenario where Will Anderson falls, but I'm not going to include him. He would be
Yeah.
3. Probably then Tyree Wilson, and then there's probably Christian Gonzalez. As long as it's not an offensive lineman, I'll pick Tristen.
No Pete Skoronskis or
I
Paris Johnson's here.
I what I know is Skaronski might fall like a lot
Okay,
into the
interesting.
back end of the first round, and
Uh-huh.
it makes sense though because like he's not big enough for tackle. Like the arm length is a problem. Um,
Yeah, 30 inches, right?
32, I think
32. Okay.
it's 1.25 inches shorter than what Rashawn Slater was, and
Okay.
everyone made the talk over him having to move to guard. But I think it just has to happen with Skaronski. And moving, he's never played guard, and it's hard to take a guy in the first round who you're like, all right, yeah, we're taking you. Not only are you moving from left tackle, you're also going to guard. So it's a tough mix there. But
For
he's also an
sure.
athletic freak. So
And yeah, that's what makes it so interesting, isn't it? Like, how do those small things matter to different teams? What are they really looking for? And we'll never know exactly. You might have a better idea than I
yeah,
because you do the recruiting analyst work. You're doing all of these scouting type, profiles on people. You do that with TWSN underscore on Twitter, and I appreciate your time and all of that. Just tell me, what is the life that you live like, looking and doing all the analyst type work and the scouting type work that you do?
um, it's really fun. Like I never really imagined that I'd be 19, like doing all this. And it's fun. It's difficult too, because like you know, I'm in college. I'm double majoring.
My
I'm
goodness.
working for a football team, and I like writing. It's just there's a lot, but it's so much fun, and it's just kind of like it's just a different way to express like football. Because like after I stopped playing football, I didn't want to be like out of football completely.
Yep.
So this was just gave me like a new route to like learn different aspects about it.
That is great stuff, man. What do you double major in, if you don't mind sharing?
Business and criminal justice. So two
Oh,
things.
wow. Entirely busy with a lot of things. And I
Yeah,
really appreciate you taking the time here to join me on the show.
thank
And
you.
that's Tristen Kuhn. You can follow him at Kuhn Tristan, Tristan with the E. My son's name is Tristan, but it has an A. So
Yeah, I think my dad named me after a movie or something. It's like Legends of the Fall or whatever.
well, Tristan, thanks again for coming on today. Really appreciate your time. And we will be back with another episode on takeaways. Make sure to give us a follow at Vegas Nation. And all three shows we have every week are found right here. So hit subscribe wherever you follow Vegas Nation. Thank you so much for the time and have a great day.
Thank you. We'll see.
Thanks.